Hi, everybody. Welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I'm the host of this program. Well, we corrected the huge error that we made in 2016. And the election of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, it has to be historical. You know, the demonstrations on Saturday across the country, they were the biggest demonstrations I've seen in the change of the presidency since Richard Nixon resigned back in 1974. Those of you that are still around then, you remember when Nixon gave his little speech saying that on August 8th, noon August 8th, he was going to step down from the presidency, the first time a president has ever resigned, and Gerald Ford would be taking over. There were mass celebrations across the country. A lot of cheering, a lot of signs at that time that said, you know, jail to the chief and all that sort of thing. And so these demonstrations that I saw on Saturday, when Joe Biden finally went over the top, 273 electoral votes at that time, and they put him over the top, massive celebrations all across the country. Huge celebration in New York, in Washington, in Los Angeles, in Detroit, in Chicago. It was like a nightmare was coming to an end. It hasn't ended yet. It won't end until noon on the 20th of January. It was like a national nightmare had come to an end. And the country felt liberated. They knew we'd made a huge mistake, and we had corrected that mistake. And now, as President-elect Biden sets up his transition team, and this transition team is already functioning, the idiot in chief is filing lawsuits all across the country trying to get the vote turned around. And of course, you know, there are a few of his supporters. For example, lily-livered Lindsey Graham from South Carolina said, well, we'll go to court and we'll get this overturned and Trump will be back in. And you've got two or three other nuts that are saying the same thing. But the fact is that what he is charging, the courts are going to throw out. The election stands. Joe Biden has been elected. He will be the 46th president of the United States. Trumpy's best bet is to pack his bags and all of his crooked friends and get out of town. Of course, Trump is going to be residing in another federal institution there in probably a year's time or so, and he's wearing an orange jumpsuit, residing in a federal pen because of his income tax irregularities. But the 4 years, the administration of the worst president in the history of the United States is coming to an end. And to that we can say, thank God. Thank God for the common sense of the majority of the American people. The people that realize this overgrown child was totally unfit to be president of the United States. And he showed that in 4 years, incapable of governing. Totally incapable of governing. And of course, some of the crackpots he brought in with him will also be gone. One of the nuttiest advisors that he has is Rudy Giuliani. I mean, that guy's nuttier than a bed bug with fleas. And unfortunately, Trump is an idiot, and of course, he's listening to this nincompoop, and consequently, he's going to have all these lawsuits. The lawyers are going to get rich out of the Republican Party. You know, a lawsuit to a lawyer, hey, that's money in the bank. Of course, they're going to follow up on it. It's going to be thrown out. Any judge with any common sense is going to say, up, and that's it, gone. And if Trump had a brain in his head, he would have done like his predecessors have done that have lost elections, like George H.W. Bush when he conceded. Jerry Ford when he lost to Jimmy Carter. and Jimmy Carter when he lost to Ronald Reagan and so forth. You concede with grace, because once the campaign is over, the country is supposed to come back together and become united. And of course, we know, even though that is one of President Biden's goals, that that just isn't going to happen. There are too many of Trump's supporters, too many stupid people in this country, that they're going to still maintain their dumb militias and so forth and so on. Because to them, patriotism is not patriotism of the country. It's patriotism of this big nincompoop that we had in the White House for 4 years. But he is gone, will be gone very shortly. I would imagine that between now and January 20th, he will still be president, with all the powers, so forth, of the presidency. But I would imagine the order has gone out to the military that they're not going to allow him to do anything that is going to get the country in trouble before the new administration takes over. The country has enough trouble now with this COVID-19. And I like the fact that the president-elect is tackling this problem right off and setting up an advisory board of experts that know what they're talking about, and that we're going to set up a program that is going to try to get this under control. Right now, it's booming. I heard on the news today here in the state of Vermont, we had our 59th death from COVID-19 up in Orleans County. And the number of people that have tested positive is booming in Vermont. A group at the University of Vermont, of course, St. Michael's College, you know, is pretty much on lockdown because of the number of students there that have tested positive and the way it's spreading around the campus. And also in a number of schools in the central part of the state, many folks that were at that hockey scrimmage a couple of weeks ago. And COVID-19 is booming around the state. And speaking of the state, you almost forget about that election. I mean, Phil Scott, re-elected to a third term very handily. What looked like it was going to be a close contest, and was probably the closest contest on a statewide level, was lieutenant governor. And a young lady named Molly Gray is going to be the new lieutenant governor. She has sort of come from out of nowhere. She's a graduate of Vermont Law School, I believe maybe a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago at the most. And she's a young lady with a lot of ambition to be able to get hired by the Attorney General's office as a Deputy Attorney General for the state of Vermont. And now she's going to be Lieutenant Governor. She's never had any experience in the legislature. Usually your Lieutenant Governor is someone that has served in the House and then in the Senate, and has some legislative experience. But the incoming Lieutenant Governor, of course, will not have had that experience. Her experience in government, she was an aide to Congressman Peter Welch in Washington. So she's had a little experience on the, say, national level at that point in time. And she worked for the Red Cross, so international experience. She came home to Vermont, went to Vermont Law School in Royalton, and got admitted to the bar. Went to work for the Attorney General, and became Deputy Attorney General. Probably not so much in the prosecutorial reign of that, but probably a lot of research, you know, back up the other prosecuting attorneys with research on constitutional law, and which is very, very, very interesting. And I know I've studied the Constitution myself and There are a lot of innuendos in there, and you say, well, how can the court interpret this such and such a way? Well, she's not going to be the lieutenant governor, and I would not be surprised if after 1 or 2 terms as lieutenant governor, she takes a shot at Phil Scott, if he's still around, and runs for governor. Unless Phil Scott steps down after a 3rd or 4th term and the job is wide open, I'm sure Molly will go after the Democratic nomination and try to become our 2nd female governor. And with her ambition and her drive, and I don't know how she does it, but she will probably be very successful at that. Other surprises, the fact that the Speaker of the House lost her election. Lost it by 20 votes up in, a legislative district that comprises Milton, Vermont, and that area around Sandbar State Park, plus Grand Isle County. Now, she lost by 20 votes. And it's rather interesting that she lost to, it's the case of an uncle-nephew is now going to represent that district. I believe they live in Milton, I think. So they're going to be representing that district. The Speaker of the House there, Mitzi Johnson, has asked for a recount, but you know, a district that really is not that large, the separation is 20 votes. And she may pick up 4 or 5 or 6, but in a district that small and you're 20 votes down, a recount is not really going to change the end results. It may change the vote total somewhat, but not, 20 votes is an awful big number to overcome. So it looks like there's going to be new leadership, new lieutenant governor, a new president pro tem of the Senate, as Tim Ash, who is the current pro tem, ran for lieutenant governor and lost in the primary to Miss Molly Gray. So there'll have to be a new leader there, on the Democratic side at least, and a new Speaker in the House. And I'm sure that's going to be quite a battle. There are a number of Democrats that have been there for a long while, and I'm sure it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle. And this, of course, is going to work to the advantage of the Republican minority. Because, you know, if the battle is fierce enough, people are going to take sides. And depending on whose feelings are hurt and so forth, whether they're going to be able to get back together again. The Republicans made a number of gains in the legislature, not an awful lot, but enough to give them a little edge. Down here in Rutland County, I'd say one minor surprise, and that is in the Senate race where Joshua Terenzini came in second, the chairman of the select board in Rutland Town. His dad, of course, is the longtime representative from Rutland Town. So now Josh will be in the Senate, Senator Terenzini, and Representative Terenzini will continue in the House. I believe he was elected to his 5th term. I think it was his 5th term, it was 4th or 5th. So Tom Terenzini will be returning representing Rutland Town. No real surprises in the city. All the incumbents 4 incumbents are returning back. Another surprise that I always thought Greg Cox might do a lot better in the Senate race. I know 2 years ago I was kind of surprised that he didn't get it. I thought he had a very, very strong possibility because of his work with the farmers market. And I felt that this time he pretty much had a real good shot at it. But I was kind of surprised. I think he came in 5th, as I recall. I've run for the Senate a couple times myself. 96 came in 6th, and 2006 came in 5th. You know, moved up 1. What the heck? But campaigning, it's a lot of hard work. It's like a full-time job, but it's very, very, very interesting. In the 2 campaigns that I ran, even though they didn't result in electoral victory, they were a lot of fun. Very, very great experience. get around the county and meet all kinds of people. You have your church suppers and your fireman breakfast, and after a while, the chicken tastes like rubber, and when you go to your fireman's breakfast, the ham starts tasting like shoe leathers. But you get to meet a lot of very, very interesting people, and also the opportunity to speak to a lot of social studies classes, the high school level, junior high, the elementary school. So campaigning, if you're running for the state senate, campaigning, and I speak from personal experience, it is a great personal experience for you. And whether you win or lose, the fact that you've had this experience will be a plus in itself. And the fact that you have participated in our democracy. And that's what the people did here in 2020 across the nation. The highest voter turnout in history. And I think a lot of the things that came in, you know, if you ever say there's a good side to a tragedy, the idea of voting by mail, I think it's here to stay. Being able to pre-vote, I think it's here to stay. It has worked. Instead of having a president elected by only, say, 50 or 60% or even less of the registered voters in this country, I think the turnout was something like close to 85, 90%. Joe Biden got more votes for president than any other candidate in the history of the nation. And by the same token, Donald Trump got more votes for a losing candidate than any other losing candidate in history. In fact, Trump got more votes in losing in 2020 than he did in winning in 2016. About 11 million more. And that is because of the tremendous turnout. The people said, well, we better get involved. And that's what democracy is. As I've said before, you know, the word democracy, the root word is demos, which is Greek for people. And to make democracy work, people have got to get involved and participate. And they did. Participate as a candidate. Participate as a voter. Voting is not only a privilege, it is a right and it is an obligation. We want to maintain this democracy. We came close to losing it. Under Trump, he had the ideas of a dictator. He would have made himself an emperor. He admired people like Putin. He admired a number of other dictators around the world who could just snap their fingers and their will was done, or otherwise bad consequences. And you know, when Trump would stand there and say, oh, there's bad people out there, well, the worst of them all was the guy that was speaking. But he will soon be history. Now, will he sit down and write a book about his, as most former presidents do? First of all, is he going to have a presidential library? I doubt it. Doubt it very much. And is he going to write a book? I doubt that too. A number of books are going to be written about him. The worst administration in the history of the country. So there'll be books written about him. But I don't think he himself will do it. I don't think he's got the great brain power to do it. And will he have his attorney? Loony Rudy. Well, I said with Loony Rudy, he's nuttier than a fruitcake or nuttier than a bed bug with fleas. So I doubt he'll do it too. But thank God, a couple of months they're going to be gone. They're going to be history. The one thing that Trump accomplished, he helped rebuild the Democratic Party. He helped bring people out to vote. In his own way, even though he never intended to do it, I think he revived a spirit of democracy in this country. With his ridicule, his putting down of people of color, people that didn't speak English, people that had come into this country as immigrants, people that didn't worship the way he thought they should. Of course, for somebody who didn't worship at all, what the hell difference does it make? We've got a lot of growing to do, folks. But you know, America is moving closer and closer to it. The ideals that Thomas Jefferson stated in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're getting there. We're not there yet. We've got a ways to go, but we're getting there bit by bit by bit by bit. You know, we made a giant leap in 2008 when this country elected Barack Obama President of the United States. We took a step back in 2016 with the person we elected then, but now we've moved ahead again. For the first time in the history of this country, we are going to have a female vice president. And not only a woman for vice president, but also a lady of color. The child of immigrants, one, her dad came from Jamaica, her mother from India. This country is moving ahead. And in 2024, Kamala Harris will become the first female president of the United States. Because Joe Biden at 78, when he gets to be 82, he won't be up to running a full-scale campaign. And I think Joe's going to be a one-term president. I think he's aware of that. And so he picked a running mate that would be able to take over and be able to succeed him. And Kamala Harris will do that. These 4 years that she's vice president will be 4 years of preparing, 4 years of getting familiar with the reins of the executive branch of government. So that come 2024, when President Biden steps down, Vice President Harris will be ready to step in as the 47th and first female president of the United States. And I guarantee you this is going to happen. And I think she's going to be a darn good president because she is one tough lady. And as I said before, one of the things I can be thankful for, and every man in this country should be thankful for, that she's not your wife. You often wonder how things are going in that household. Who calls the shots? No question there. But she's going to be a very good vice president. And when her term comes in 4 years, and I hope to God I'm still alive at that time, to see the first female president, the second person of color elected to the presidency of the United States, become our 47th president. We've taken that step forward. And it was a big step. And a vast majority of the country took that step. And we're ready to keep moving ahead. And you know, that is the beauty. That is the beauty of this nation. Our motto is E pluribus unum, from the many, one. And this is something that we have been building toward and building toward and building toward. We're going to get there, folks. We're going to get there someday. Probably not in our lifetime, but we will get there. And you know, I was thinking today of President-elect Biden. He will be the 15th person to serve as President of the United States in my lifetime. When I was born, Franklin Roosevelt had just taken office. So I had Franklin Roosevelt, and he was followed by my favorite, Harry Truman. And of course, Truman was followed by Dwight Eisenhower, JFK, another one I admired a great deal, Lyndon Johnson. Then came the Nixon years, Richard Nixon, and Richard Nixon was a tragedy. not by the fact that he was forced to resign and not because of Watergate, because this was a man that was very, very talented. And he had all the potential of being a great president. And yet, this paranoia that he was always being criticized, that he was always being looked down on, that he had trouble winning. My golly, he was elected in 1972 by carrying 48 of the 50 states, a huge mandate. And yet he blew it because he had this terrible, terrible paranoia that somehow or another he was being persecuted. And that is the tragedy of Richard Nixon, a tragedy. He was succeeded by Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was only president for 2 years, but in those 2 years, Jerry Ford did a tremendous job of restoring respect to the office of the presidency. That respect had pretty well gone down under Richard Nixon. But Gerald Ford came in the short 2 years he was president. He restored that respect and that dignity of the office of President of the United States. Gerald Ford, of course, was the only president that was never elected. He was elected to Congress from Michigan. And then, of course, when Spiro Agnew was forced out of office as vice president, Richard Nixon picked Jerry Ford to succeed Agnew as vice president. And, of course, when Nixon resigned, Ford moved up to the presidency. And when he ran again, 1976, people held it against him that he had pardoned his predecessor. And that cost him the election to Jimmy Carter in '76. I think the decision to pardon Richard Nixon, at that time, the country needed to be reunited. The country was divided over the Vietnam War. And the country needed to come back together again, be united again. And putting Nixon in jail and so forth, it just would have kept that division. And I think Ford saw that in the effort to reunite the country. He more or less hurt his own chances to be elected on his own and pardoned Richard Nixon. And I think that was what defeated him in 1976. 1980, Ronald Reagan, the so-called Reagan Revolution, which many conservative Republicans think that Reagan is a saint, but he was not one of our better presidents. His successor, George H.W. Bush, was a much better president. And of course, we had Bill Clinton for 2 terms. Then we had the stolen election of 2000, where George W. Bush came in for 8 years, Barack Obama for 8, then this tragedy of the last 4 years, and now the sun is shining again, and we'll have President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris taking office on the 20th of January, 2021. Another surprise for me personally was my good friend Dave Potter. Dave has served 18 years in the legislature as a representative from Clarendon, West Rutland, Proctor, and parts of Tinmouth. And of course, he lost this last time around. But I talked with Dave on the phone. I said, you know, Dave, there's life after politics. And Dave, you know, has served his country well. He had 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. Taught at Rutland High School for a lot of years, taught driver ed and science. 18 years in the legislature, and many, many years of service to the town of Clarendon on the select board, and also, I believe, was moderator of their town meeting down there. So, you know, you're a little disappointed. We're all disappointed when you lose, but, you know, you just pick it up, dry your tears, pick it up, move ahead, take on the next challenge, and that's the way to go. But this is a great day in America, a great day. And I just thank God that I'm alive and healthy enough and able to enjoy it. We have a great future ahead of us as a country. We've got problems, big, big problems. We're going to have a sort of a depression coming up, but we'll handle it. So with that, may Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless America, which He surely has. God love you. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next week.